Hi again, and now it's time for my classic old school blues turnaround for the month of June 2015. And in these lessons I try to show you some turnarounds that you can use in different kinds of blues songs. And I just kind of picked ones that come to mind each particular month. And this month I had in mind a tune by Fenton called I Hear Some Blues Downstairs, which he recorded I think in the early 70s. I have the album in my collection somewhere. But he uses a turnaround, which is a pretty standard electric blues turnaround, but one you don't hear as much as you would think you would. And I'll show you a few different ways you can use this, not just played by Fenton Robinson, but from some other tunes. So basically I'm going to show you the same progression, the same turnaround that you can use three different ways. And that's one thing I like about some of these turnarounds. You can use them on different parts of the neck and different keys, and they sound different and they sound unique. In the song, I Hear Some Blues Downstairs. Maybe I'm wrong, but on the record I hear the song in A flat. So I'm going to show you the example for this one in A flat, and then you can move this to any key. I'll show you a couple examples of that. So it's a shuffle tune, and the song he goes through it, the bass rhythm part is just a shuffle. And I'll go from the 5 to the 4 to the 1. And that's the turnaround that I'm going to show you. I botched that just a little bit. Not exactly smooth, but it's pretty simple. So here's what I'm doing. My first finger is on the A flat, which is the 4th fret of the 1st string. Then I'm going to put my pinky on the 7th fret of the 2nd string. And then I'm going to pick 2nd, 1st, 2nd. And when you do that, you can pick each string individually, or you can kind of drag the pick and hit both strings. Or there's single string. You can vary this a lot just by the way you pick it. And then I'm going to take my ring finger and put it down on the 6th fret of the 2nd string. And then my second finger. And all the time I'm keeping that first finger anchored on the 4th fret. And then when I wrap it up, I'm just doing a double stop, which is a A flat, and I've got my first finger flattened out on the 1st and 2nd strings at the 4th fret. So the whole thing. And then he does this little augmented chord. You could also do a lot of different ways to get into the 5, but he does this. And that chord shape, if you don't know this one, here's my root, which is a E flat. So this is an E flat augmented, I'm pretty sure. And I've got my first ring finger there on the 6th fret of the 5th string. My second finger is on the 5th fret of the 4th string. And then my first finger is going to flatten out and get both the 2nd and 3rd strings at the 4th fret. And that's what you get. You hear that in a lot of different songs. So the whole turnaround. And he goes back into the 1. And that's kind of the tune. I think it's a little faster than that, but that's it. Now you can take the same thing and stay in the same key and play it on the bass notes like this. I got that from listening to Chuck Berry, and in fact this month I'm doing a lesson on Chuck Berry's blues guitar, and I'll show that one to you again. But all I'm doing, let's move that. Let's go to A. This might be a little easier for you. And I'm going to start from the A note, which is on the 4th string at the 7th fret. That's going to be where my first finger is, just like my first finger was up here or down here for the other example. And then my pinky is going to start on the 10th fret of the 5th string. And I'm going to do the same picking progression, this time 5, 4, 5. And again, I can pick each string individually, or I can mush them together. It's the exact same movement with the fingers. So my ring finger comes down the 9th fret of the 5th string, my second finger on the 8th fret, and then my first finger flattens out on the 5th and 4th strings at the 7th fret. And then for a turnaround I could do this, like I did here in A flat, or I could just do a 7th chord, so something like this, which is a typical Chuck Berry type thing. So all I have to do is, if the way I remember these, maybe it's simplistic, but if I'm playing in A, I think of my first position bar chord, and I just put that turnaround over the top of it. Or I bring it down here to the A, which would be where my pinky is when I do the bar chord normally. First finger, pinky. Like that. So there's two different ways, and you can move it. So if I play in C, I play in G, and so forth. So basically where you put it to get those bass notes on the 5th and 4th strings, depends where the 1 is. So the 1, first position bar chord, that tells you where you're going to put the fingers. That's how I do it. Now one more way that you can play the same exact thing is this time based on the long A chord. So let's take the key of C. And this is what I call a long C chord. It's a long A. In country blues you play a lot of like that, where you've got an A chord. This is my A with my first finger barring the 2nd fret, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings. So if I slide that up to the 5th fret, that's a C. And then I take my pinky on the 8th fret of the 1st string, and then I play from the 4th string down, that's a C. And then my first position bar chord is right here. And this is how I remember this, and this is what I'm talking about. You can play like this. So this time I'm going from using the 4th and the 3rd strings. And the way I remember it is by this shape, this long shape. Now a country blues turnaround, you'd pick the 1st string. I showed that turnaround earlier with kind of a Robert Johnson style turnaround. In this case, you're going to go move the pinky over to the 4th string. And I'm picking 4th, 3rd, 4th. And then when I flatten out, I can just get the 3rd and 4th strings, which is a C, or I can get that whole C chord. And then for a turnaround, to wrap it up for a 5 chord, since I'm in C, my 5 is a G. And Chuck Berry, this is a turnaround that Chuck Berry used quite a bit. And he did it like this. A lot of times he'll just play the bass notes on that first position bar chord, kind of like a power chord type thing. So again, there's another way to use that exact same turnaround. So if I'm playing in the key of D, here's my first position D bar chord. Here's my long D. And I just do like that. If I'm playing in E, I wind up on my second position E bar chord. Here's my first position E. And you can play it all up and down the neck. And again, like the other turnaround, the other versions of that same turnaround, I'm really looking for the first position bar chord. That tells me where I can play it. So I can either play it here, I can play it on the bass note, or I can play it here. Those were all 3 examples in the key of A. Hopefully this is something you can use, and if you want to hear some examples of this, listen to Fenton Robinson's I Hear Some Blues Downstairs. for that first example I showed you, the one on the first and second strings. And then the other examples, Chuck Berry's got some tunes where he does this. He's got one called Worried Life Blues, and there's another one, I think it's Confessin' the Blues, or Childhood Sweetheart, one of those blues tunes that he does where he uses that turnaround. And he uses that in a lot of his blues-like tunes. I hope this lesson was interesting and helpful and something you can actually learn and use in your playing. If you have any questions, comments, let me know. I'll have the tab posted for this as soon as possible. And I'll be back in July with another classic, old school blues turnaround.